Translation. Delivery room. 1:15 a.m. I had just taken my first breath and cried out. In just a moment, a nurse named Chu Hong Mai would walk in, silently abduct me, and swap me with another baby. In my previous life, she succeeded. I lived a difficult 20 years in a cramped rental home. When I finally uncovered the truth and returned to my family, I was sent straight to the underworld by a bottle of poisoned water. But this life was different. I toiled in the underworld for 10 years, finally accumulating enough merit points to earn this chance at a do-over. I stared at the clock on the wall, silently calculating. Chu Hong Mai still had 1:45 before making her move. In 1:45, Nurse Chu Hong Mai would push open the door and enter this room. She would claim she needed to take the baby for newborn screening. My mother, exhausted from childbirth, would surely not suspect a thing. Then, Chu Hong Mai would carry me to the storage room at the end of the corridor. Her cousin, Lin Shu Lon, would be waiting there, holding another newborn girl. The 2 newborn identification bracelets would be removed and swapped. In just 3 minutes, Shen Yu Ting would become Lin Ka Wei. Lin Ka Wei would become Shen Yu Ting. In my previous life, they used this exact method to steal a full 20 years of my life. But at this moment, I was just a newborn, unable to speak, unable to roll over, unable even to support my own tiny head. The only things I could do were 3: cry, clench my fists, and stay awake. But that was enough. 10 years in the underworld had taught me one thing. A mother's intuition about her child is the sharpest alarm bell in the world. I just needed to activate it. My mother held me for a while, her eyelids gradually drooping. My father, beside her, gently said, "You go to sleep first, I'll watch the baby." No, in the previous life, it was because my father couldn't resist his midnight drowsiness. He went to lie on the sofa for a bit, which gave Chu Hong Mai her opportunity. I don't need father to watch me. I need mother to hold me. Hold me so tightly that no one can separate us. Just as mother was about to place me back in the nearby bassinet. Wah! I immediately burst into screams. It wasn't a baby's whiny cry, but a hoarse, full-throated wail. Mother, startled, quickly picked me up again. "What's wrong, baby? Shush, don't cry anymore." The moment mother held me close, I instantly stopped crying, my eyes still watery, a tiny hand clutching her hospital gown, refusing to let go. Mother paused for a moment, then turned to father and said, "Look, she's holding on so tight, as if she's afraid I'll put her down." Father reached out to take me. Wah! The crying was even louder than before. Father recoiled his hand, startled. I immediately snuggled deeper into mother's embrace, quieting down again, still gripping her gown tightly. Father was both amused and helpless. Only 2 hours old and already sticking to her mother? A thin film of moisture glistened in mother's eyes. It seems she only recognizes me. Mother tightened her arms, pressing me close to her chest. "Then I won't put you down. I'll sleep with you tonight." Time ticked by, minute by minute. At 2 a.m., father had dozed off on the sofa. Mother was also sleepy, but every 10 minutes, I'd let out a soft whimper, just enough to keep her in a semi-conscious state. 2:30, 2:40, 2:50, my heart pounded faster and faster. 2:55, very faint footsteps echoed down the corridor. The rubber soles of nurses' shoes barely made a sound on the tiled floor. But I heard the footsteps stop outside the room, the doorknob softly turn, and a woman in a white uniform push the door open. 35 or 36 years old. Average build, with a standard professional smile on her face. In her hands, she pushed a baby transport cart. Chu Hong Mai, I had waited 10 years for her. She lowered her voice. "Mrs. Shen, I apologize for disturbing your rest. According to regulations, we need to take the baby for newborn metabolic screening. We'll bring her right back when it's done." Mother groggily opened her eyes. "Screening now? Usually, it's done within 2 to 4 hours after birth. It's easier to perform while the baby is quiet." Her words were clear, her tone gentle and appropriate. In my previous life, mother had been deceived in the same way. Her grip began to loosen. This was the moment. Wah! My cries exploded in the room, kicking my legs, shaking my head, my whole body trembling, my tiny frame scrunched up, clinging tightly to mother. 10 small fingers dug deep into the fabric of her maternity gown. Firmly anchored there, mother was startled, instinctively tightening her embrace around me. Even more. "What's wrong, baby?" Father shot up from the sofa. "What's happening?" Chu Hong Mai's smile froze for a moment, then quickly returned to normal. "Mr. Shen, it's just a routine check. Perhaps the baby was startled awake by our conversation." Father looked at me, crying until my voice was hoarse, then looked at Chu Hong Mai. "Does this check absolutely have to be done right now?" This is hospital policy. My daughter doesn't seem comfortable. Can it be done during the day? Chu Hong Mai's mouth twitched slightly. Then father walked to the door of the room and glanced into the corridor. The nurse on duty on this floor tonight doesn't seem to be you. The atmosphere instantly froze for 2 seconds. I'm covering for a colleague. She had an urgent matter. Father said nothing, his gaze darkening. Then please report to the manager tomorrow to reschedule. Tonight is not convenient. Chu Hong Mai opened her mouth, as if to say something more, but father had already sat down beside mother, one hand on her shoulder, the other gently patting my back. His posture made it abundantly clear she could leave. Chu Hong Mai's gaze lingered on me for a few seconds. Through my blurry tears, I saw a cold, dark glint in her eyes. Then, she turned and pushed the empty cart out of the room. I stopped crying, snuggling into mother's warm embrace. Mother gently patted my back, softly humming a tuneless lullaby. Father didn't return to the sofa, he remained seated by the bed, watching us. Early the next morning, sunlight streamed through the hospital room curtains. I lay in mother's arms, having actually barely slept all night, but I appeared obedient and quiet, like the most reassuring baby. The first thing mother did upon waking was to look down at me. Discovering I was also looking at her with open eyes, mother's voice trembled with joy. Husband, look, she keeps staring at me. Father leaned in, just about to touch me. I immediately scrunched my tiny face, pouted, and my eyes reddened. Father's hand hovered in the air, then he awkwardly withdrew it. All right, father won't touch you anymore. I'll just stand and watch. Mother couldn't help but laugh. This little one is truly my shadow. She won't let anyone touch her but me. Exactly. I wanted everyone to know clearly that this child only recognized her mother. And no one should even think about taking me from her arms. In the morning, when the doctor made rounds, the attending physician entered with a team. They conducted a thorough examination of me, confirming all my vital signs were stable. The newborn screening was also rescheduled. It would be done during the day, following proper official procedures, with the head nurse personally performing the task. Father stood by, observing the entire process, not leaving my side for a moment. I noticed his gaze was different from last night. Last night was merely instinctive caution, but today, his eyes clearly held deliberate, careful observation. After the examination, he made an excuse to go buy breakfast, then stood in the corridor and made a phone call. His voice was very low, but I nestled in mother's arms, could hear clearly. Help me investigate someone. Chu Hong Mai, a nurse at this hospital. Also, extract the footage from the third-floor maternity ward hallway camera from last night and send it to me. Excellent. Father was indeed not foolish. As someone who started a business in the security technology industry, his cautious instincts were already sharp. He had begun his investigation. At 2 p.m., an uninvited guest appeared in the hospital room. A woman in her early 30s, wearing a simple floral patient gown, with a round face that looked very friendly when she smiled. She stood at the door, peeking in slightly, gently knocking on the doorframe. Mrs. Shen, hello, I'm from room 206. The Lin family. I also just gave birth to a baby girl yesterday. We share the same birthday. So it's fate. I came to visit you for a bit. Mother was in her postpartum period, still weak and unable to go anywhere, so having someone to talk to cheered her up. Come in, please have a seat. Lin Shu Lon, Chu Hong Mai's cousin, the biological mother of the fake heiress Lin Ka Wei. In my previous life, this very woman had placed her own daughter into the Shen family, stealing the life that was rightfully mine. At this moment, she smiled and walked in, her gaze sweeping over me, a faint, almost imperceptible cold glint flashing in her eyes. Oh my, your daughter is so well behaved and beautiful. May I hold her for a bit? She extended her hand, and my entire body instantly tensed up. A piercing cry erupted, my tiny face flushed crimson, my limbs flailing wildly. Mother quickly hugged me tight. Oh, I'm sorry, she's very wary of strangers. She cries if anyone but me holds her. Lin Shu Lon reluctantly withdrew her hand, giving a forced laugh. No worries, it's normal for babies. She didn't insist further, switching to chat with mother about raising a child, formula milk, diapers, and even postpartum meal plans. As she talked, she subtly shifted closer to mother. Each time she entered the 3-foot radius around the bassinet, I would start to whimper. As soon as she backed away, I would immediately quiet down. After this happened 3 times, even mother noticed something. Although she didn't say anything aloud, she instinctively held me a little tighter. Lin Shu Lon stayed for over half an hour before leaving, saying with a smile before she went, If you get tired, just call me over to watch the baby for a bit. I'm right next door. Mother replied courteously. But when the door closed, she looked down at me, seemingly pondering something. Baby, is there something you don't like? I rubbed against her palm, quietly blinking my eyes. Mother smiled softly, but there was a very subtle, added seriousness in her smile. All right, I hear you. I'll keep her away from you from now on. By dusk, Father returned, his expression not looking very good, his face grave. He firmly closed the room door and lowered his voice as he spoke to Mother. I had someone investigate the nurse from last night, Chu Hong Mai. She's only been working here for 3 months, and her qualifications and experience in her file are all fake. Mother's eyes widened. What do you mean? And the hallway camera last night, exactly during that time, the equipment malfunctioned and didn't record anything at all. I've been in the security industry for 20 years. I've never seen such a convenient coincidence. Mother's expression instantly changed. Instinctively, she hugged me tighter, her voice trembling. Are you saying the person last night wasn't here to check on our child? Father didn't answer directly. He sat down by the bed, one hand holding Mother's, the other gently stroking my head. Don't be afraid. I've told my assistant to contact the police and also requested the hospital to increase security. From now on, when I'm not here, no one, absolutely no one, is to touch our Yu Ting. Mother nodded vigorously. I closed my eyes, pressing my tiny face against Mother's chest. Father had started acting, a full 20 years earlier than in my previous life. All I needed to do was continue playing the role of a well-behaved baby who only followed her mother. Immediately upon discharge, Father brought 4 bodyguards to pick us up. 2 nanny cars were waiting, every detail meticulously arranged, during the 20-minute drive from the hospital to the Shen family villa. Mother held me in her arms the entire time, never letting go. Father sat in the passenger seat, making call after call, reinstalling the entire home camera system, ensuring no blind spots, adding smart alarm devices to the nursery, sending real-time notifications to his phone whenever anyone entered or exited, yes. Reselecting nannies, all with thorough background checks, including family relations going back 3 generations, all clearly verified. Listening to these commands from Mother's arms, I felt incredibly reassured. In my previous life, I was swapped because the Shen family, despite their wealth, had a woefully weak sense of security. The idea of a newborn being swapped had never even crossed their minds. This life was different. Father had already entered a battle-ready state. Returning to the Shen family villa, it was the first time I entered this house as its rightful owner. In my previous life, I was 20 when I first crossed this threshold. Back then, I wore a 100 yuan dress, clutching a crumpled DNA test report, my entire body trembling. The guards at the gate stopped me 3 times. Who are you looking for? This isn't where you should be. Now, the butler respectfully opened the car door, and the nannies had a red carpet ready. Grandfather stood at the entrance, his face full of joyful wrinkles. My eldest granddaughter is home? Let grandfather see you quickly. He reached out to hold me. I instinctively scrunched my tiny face, but this time, I managed not to cry. After all, grandfather had treated me very well in my previous life. After I was recognized, he was the first to want to share his inheritance with me. I just slightly turned my head, burying my face in Mother's neck. Grandfather wasn't angry at all. Instead, he laughed heartily. This little one is just like her mother. Once she recognizes someone, not even 9 oxen and 2 tigers could pull her away. Good, she has personality. Grandmother stood behind him, wearing a dark red cheongsam, a proper smile on her face. But I noticed her gaze at me was completely different from how she looked at grandfather. When she looked at grandfather, her eyes held attentiveness and deference. When she looked at me, there was only scrutiny. Oh, this baby is so pretty, just like her mother. Grandmother reached out to touch my face. I immediately burst into tears without hesitation. Small, aggrieved cries. Grandmother's hand froze in midair. Mother quickly comforted me. It's okay, baby, don't be scared, it's grandmother. Grandfather interjected. She's just a person, she'll get used to her in a few days. Grandmother withdrew her hand, her smile unchanged, but a very faint, almost imperceptible coldness flickered in the depths of her eyes. This expression was all too familiar to me. In my previous life, after I returned and was recognized, grandmother had also looked at me with this very expression, polite, yet emanating a bone-deep detachment. I later learned that grandmother had opposed father marrying mother from the very beginning. She felt mother's background wasn't noble enough, not worthy of the Shen family. She had always hoped that second uncle Shen Jianshan's branch could seize power. Because second uncle's wife was grandmother's maternal niece. To put it plainly, in her mind, the second branch was her true family. After settling into the Shen family home, outwardly everything seemed peaceful. Before my 1-month mark, I continued to maintain the persona of only accepting mother. Wherever mother went, I obediently followed. The moment she left my sight, I would start to cry. This meant mother almost never left my side, and it also prevented everyone else, including nannies, the butler, and grandmother, from having any private contact with me. On father's side, the investigation was also progressing. He had someone trace Chu Hongmai's phone call history. Inside, there was one number contacted very frequently. Each call not long but extremely regular. That number was an unregistered SIM card. However, through location signal analysis, it was used 70% of the time near the Shen family villa. Father spoke to his assistant in the study with a grave face. His voice kept very low. This means the person manipulating Chu Hongmai is right inside the Shen family home. The mole. I had known this all along, but I couldn't speak yet. I couldn't directly tell father who it was. All I could do was wait for him to discover it himself or for the mole to reveal their own flaw. The truth proved I didn't have to wait long. 2 days before my 1-month celebration, at 11 p.m., mother was sound asleep. Father was working in his study. The nanny had also gone home. I was alone in the nursery. Silence. A dark shadow approached my bassinet. I couldn't make out her face, but I smelled a familiar scent. It was Aunt Wong, the housekeeper who had served grandmother for over 20 years. She bent down, reaching to lift me from the bassinet. The instant her hand touched my blanket, wah, I erupted into the loudest cry of this life. At the same second, the nursery's smart alarm system activated. A piercing siren blared throughout the entire villa. Father's phone simultaneously lit up with a notification. Aunt Wang's face, flashing white in the alternating red alarm light, turned pale. In less than 20 seconds, father burst into the nursery. Mother followed close behind. Aunt Wong, what are you doing? Paraphrased. It was 1:15 a.m. in the delivery room. My inaugural cry had just filled the air. Soon, a nurse named Chu Hongmai would enter, quietly snatch me, and replace me with a different infant. In my past existence, she succeeded. I endured 2 decades of hardship within a cramped rented dwelling. Upon unearthing the truth and reuniting with my kin, I was dispatched directly to the underworld by a vial of poisoned liquid. Yet, this current life diverged. I labored relentlessly in the netherworld for 10 years, ultimately accruing sufficient merit points to secure this opportunity for a fresh start. I fixed my gaze on the wall clock, mentally calculating. Chu Hongmai had 1 hour and 45 minutes remaining before she made her move. After 1 hour and 45 minutes, Nurse Chu Hongmai was scheduled to push open the door of this very room. She'd announce the baby required newborn screening. My mother, drained from delivery, wouldn't suspect a thing. As expected, following this, Chu Hongmai would carry me to the storage facility located at the corridor's end. Her cousin, Lin Shu Lone, would already be present there, cradling another recently born girl. The 2 infant identification bands would be unfastened and exchanged. In merely 3 minutes, Shen Yu Ting would become Lin Ka Wei. Lin Ka Wei would become Shen Yu Ting. In my former life, they employed this precise tactic to rob me of 20 full years. However, at this juncture, I was merely a newborn, incapable of speech, unable to roll over, and couldn't even support my own small head. My sole capabilities were threefold: weeping, gripping tightly, and remaining awake. However, this was all I required. A decade in the netherworld had instilled in me a crucial truth. A mother's inherent gut feeling for her offspring functions as the most acute warning system imaginable. All I needed to do was trigger it. My mother held me for a while, her eyelids progressively growing heavy. My father, positioned nearby, murmured softly, "You should rest first. I'll supervise the baby." No, in the prior life, it was precisely because my father succumbed to his midnight weariness. He retired to the sofa for a brief nap, presenting Chu Hongmai with her chance. I don't require father's watch. I need mother to embrace me, to hold me so securely that no one can separate us. Just as mother intended to reposition me into the adjacent bassinet, wah, I immediately erupted into a piercing shriek. It wasn't the typical whimper of a baby, but a guttural, raw outcry that threatened to strain my throat. Mother, startled, swiftly gathered me into her arms again. "What's the matter, precious? Shish, no more tears." The instant mother held me close, I instantly quieted, my eyes still glistening with tears. A tiny hand firmly gripping the collar of her hospital attire. refusing to release. Mother paused momentarily, then addressed father. Look, she's holding on so tightly, as if she fears I'll set her down. Father extended his hand, intending to pick me up. Wah! The wailing was even louder than before. My father, startled, pulled his hand back. I promptly burrowed into my mother's arms, becoming silent once more, my tiny hand resolutely clenching her hospital gown. My father appeared both amused and resigned. Only 2 hours old and already sticking to her mother? A faint sheen of moisture shimmered in mother's eyes. It seems she only recognizes me. Mother tightened her embrace, pressing me firmly against her. Then I won't set you down. I'll sleep holding you tonight. Minutes stretched into an hour. By 2 a.m., father had drifted off to sleep on the sofa. Mother, too, was weary, but every 10 minutes, I'd emit a soft peep, just enough to keep her in a state of semi-awareness. 2:30, 2:40, 2:50, my heart thumped with increasing speed. 2:55, barely audible footfalls drifted from the corridor's end. The rubber soles of the nurse's shoes barely registered on the tiled floor. However, I perceived the footsteps halt outside the sickroom door, the handle gently rotate, and a woman in a white uniform enter. Pushing the door, she was in her mid-30s, of average build, her face adorned with a customary professional smile. She propelled a baby transport cart. Chu Hong Mai, I had been awaiting her for a decade. She lowered her voice. Mrs. Shen, I apologize for disturbing your rest. Per regulations, we must take the baby for her newborn metabolic screening. We'll return her immediately upon completion. Mother groggily opened her eyes. Screening now? Typically, it's conducted within 2 to 4 hours postpartum. It's simpler to perform when the infant is calm. Her words were articulate, her tone appropriately gentle. In my previous life, mother had been similarly duped. Her hold began to slacken. This was the precise moment. Wah! My wails erupted throughout the sickroom. I thrashed my legs, shook my head, my entire body quivering, my diminutive form curled inward, clutching my mother, my 10 small digits hooked deeply into the material of her patient gown. Securing themselves firmly, mother, startled, instinctively tightened her embrace around me even more. What's wrong, precious? Father sprang up from the sofa. What's occurring? Chu Hong Mai's smile momentarily stiffened, then swiftly regained its composure. Mr. Shen, it's merely a routine examination. Perhaps the baby was roused by our conversation. Father observed me, my cries hoarse, then turned his gaze to Chu Hong Mai. Is this examination absolutely mandatory at this precise moment? This is hospital policy. My daughter seems uncomfortable. Can it be conducted during daylight hours? The corner of Chu Hong Mai's mouth twitched slightly. Then father approached the room's entrance and peered into the hallway. The nurse on duty on this floor tonight doesn't appear to be you. The atmosphere immediately chilled for 2 seconds. I'm covering for a colleague. She had an urgent engagement. Father remained silent, his gaze intensifying. Then kindly inform the manager tomorrow to reschedule. Tonight is inconvenient. Chu Hong Mai's lips parted, as if she intended to speak further. But father had already settled beside mother, one hand on her shoulder, the other softly patting my back. His posture conveyed an unmistakable message. She was dismissed. Chu Hong Mai's eyes lingered on me for several seconds. Through my tear-blurred vision, I discerned a faint, dark chill deep within her gaze. Subsequently, she turned and propelled the empty cart out of the room. I ceased crying, nestling into my mother's comforting embrace. Mother gently patted my back, softly humming an unstructured lullaby. Father did not return to the sofa. He remained seated by the bed, observing us. As dawn broke the following day, rays of sunlight pierced the hospital room blinds. Cradled by my mother, I had, in fact, barely closed my eyes all evening. Yet I projected an image of perfect docility and stillness, embodying the most tranquil infant. My mother's initial action upon waking was to look down at me. Discovering my eyes were also open and fixed on her, mother's voice trembled with delight. Husband, look, she keeps staring at me. Father leaned in, just as he was about to touch me. I immediately furrowed my tiny face, pouted my lips, and my eyes reddened. Father's hand paused mid-air, eventually retracting with an awkward air. All right, father won't touch you anymore. I'll simply observe. Mother couldn't help but chuckle. This little one is truly my shadow. She won't allow anyone but me to hold her. Precisely, my intention was for everyone to clearly understand that this infant acknowledged only her mother. And no one should harbor thoughts of removing me from her arms. That morning, during the doctor's rounds, the attending physician entered with a team. They conducted a comprehensive examination of me. confirming all my vital statistics were stable. The newborn screening had also been rescheduled. It would proceed during daylight hours, adhering to standard official protocols, with the head nurse personally conducting the procedure. Father stood nearby, supervising the entire process, not moving an inch. I perceived a distinct change in his gaze from the previous night. Last night's look was merely an instinctive wariness. Today, however, his eyes clearly conveyed careful, calculated observation. Post-examination, he fabricated an excuse to purchase breakfast, then stood in the corridor and placed a call. His voice was kept very low, but from Mother's arms, I could distinctly hear. Help me investigate someone. Chu Hong Mai, a nurse at this hospital. Additionally, extract and send me the footage from the third-floor maternity ward hallway camera from last night. Excellent. Father was undeniably perceptive. As a founder in the security technology sector, his inherent cautiousness was already acute. He had initiated his inquiry. At 2 p.m., an uninvited visitor appeared in the hospital room. A woman in her early 30s, dressed in a plain floral patient gown, with a round face that conveyed a very friendly demeanor when she smiled. Pausing at the doorway, she peered in slightly, then lightly tapped the doorframe. Hello, Mrs. Shen. I'm from room 206. The Lin family. I also welcomed a baby girl yesterday. We share a birthday. So it feels like destiny. I just wanted to drop by and visit briefly. My mother was in her postpartum recovery, still frail and unable to leave, so company pleased her. Come in, please take a seat. Lin Shu Lon, Chu Hong Mai's cousin, was the biological mother of the ersatz heiress, Lin Ka Wei. In my previous existence, this very woman had insinuated her daughter into the Shen household, thereby usurping the life that was rightfully mine. At this moment, she entered with a smile, her gaze sweeping over me. A subtle, almost imperceptible flash of coldness in her eyes. Oh my, your daughter is so well behaved and beautiful. May I hold her for a bit? She extended her hand, and my entire body instantly tensed. A shrill cry erupted, my tiny face turned beet red, and my limbs thrashed frantically. Mother quickly pulled me close. Oh, I'm sorry, she's very wary of strangers. She cries if anyone but me holds her. Lin Shu Lon reluctantly withdrew her hand, forcing a laugh. No worries, it's normal for babies. She did not press the matter further, instead shifting the conversation to topics of child rearing with mother, formula, diapers, and even postpartum meal plans. As she spoke, she subtly drew closer to mother. Each time she advanced within a 3-foot radius of the bassinet, I would begin to whimper. The moment she retreated, I would instantly quiet down. After this sequence repeated 3 times, even mother sensed something amiss. Although she didn't articulate it, she instinctively held me a little tighter. Lin Shu Lon remained for over half an hour before departing, remarking with a smile before she left. If you get tired, just call me over to watch the baby for a bit. I'm right next door. My mother offered a polite response. However, once the door clicked shut, she gazed down at me, appearing to be deep in thought. Darling, is there something you're uneasy about? I gently stroked her palm, my eyes silently fluttering. Mother smiled softly, but within that smile lay a very faint, almost imperceptible added layer of seriousness. All right, I hear you. From now on, I'll keep her at a distance from you. As dusk approached, Father returned, his demeanor rather unsettled, his face somber. He securely shut the room door and lowered his voice as he addressed Mother. I had someone investigate the nurse from last night, Chu Hong Mai. She's only been employed here for 3 months, and her credentials and experience on file are completely fabricated. Mother's eyes widened. What exactly do you mean? And the hallway camera last night, precisely during that time frame, the equipment malfunctioned and failed to record anything at all. I've spent 20 years in the security industry. I've never encountered such a convenient malfunction. Mother's expression instantly shifted. Instinctively, she clutched me tighter, her voice trembling. Are you suggesting the person last night wasn't here to conduct a check on our child? Father did not provide a direct reply. He settled onto the bed, one hand grasping Mother's, the other gently caressing my head. Do not fear. I've instructed my assistant to contact the police and have also requested the hospital to enhance security. From this moment forward, when I'm not present, absolutely no one is to touch our Yu Ting. Mother nodded firmly. I closed my eyes, pressing my tiny face against Mother's chest. Father had commenced his actions a full 2 decades earlier than in my prior existence. My task remained simply to continue expertly playing the part of an amenable baby who exclusively followed her mother. Immediately upon discharge, Father arrived with 4 bodyguards to collect us. 2 chauffeur-driven vehicles awaited, every aspect meticulously arranged, during the 20-minute journey from the hospital to the Shen family villa. Mother continuously held me, never relinquishing her grip. Father occupied the front passenger seat, engaged in a continuous stream of phone calls, overseeing the reinstallation of the entire in-home camera system, ensuring no blind spots, adding smart alarm devices to the nursery, configured to send real-time notifications to his phone upon anyone's entry or exit, indeed. Re-selecting nannies, each undergoing thorough background checks, including verification of family relations extending back 3 generations. Listening to these directives from Mother's embrace, I felt profoundly secure. In my past life, my identity was switched because, despite the Shen family's affluence, their security awareness was woefully inadequate. The notion of an infant being swapped had never even crossed their minds. This life was different. Father had already transitioned into a combat-ready stance. Returning to the Shen family villa, it marked my inaugural entry into this residence as its rightful proprietor. I had been 20 years old in my past existence when I first passed through these gates. Then, I donned a dress costing a mere 100 yuan, tightly gripping a dog-eared DNA report, my whole body quivering. The gatekeepers halted me thrice. "Who do you seek? This is not a place for you." Now, the butler respectfully opened the car door, and the nannies had a red carpet laid out. Grandfather stood at the entrance, his face alight with joyful wrinkles. "My eldest granddaughter is home? Let grandfather see you quickly." He extended his arm, intending to embrace me. I instinctively scrunched my tiny face, but this time, I managed to suppress my tears. After all, grandfather had treated me exceptionally well in my previous life. After my true identity was recognized, he was the first to advocate for sharing his inheritance with me. I merely turned my head slightly, burying my face in Mother's neck. Grandfather was not angered in the least. On the contrary, he guffawed heartily. "This little one is just like her mother. Once she recognizes someone, not even 9 oxen and 2 tigers could pull her away. Excellent, she has character." Grandmother stood behind him, clad in a deep red cheongsam, a measured smile gracing her features. However, I observed that her gaze upon me diverged completely from how she looked at grandfather. When she regarded grandfather, her eyes held deference and compliance. When she regarded me, there was only scrutiny. "Oh, this baby is so pretty. Just like her mother." Grandmother extended her hand, intending to caress my face. I immediately burst into tears without hesitation. Small, aggrieved cries. Grandmother's hand froze mid-air. Mother swiftly soothed me. It's okay, baby, don't be scared, it's grandmother." Grandfather interjected placatingly. She's just a person. She'll get accustomed to her in a few days." Grandmother withdrew her hand, her smile unwavering, but a very faint, almost imperceptible coldness flickered in the depths of her eyes. This expression was all too familiar to me. In my previous life, after my recognition and return, grandmother had also looked at me with this exact demeanor, polite, yet exuding an intrinsic remoteness. I later learned that grandmother had vehemently opposed father marrying mother from the very outset. She considered mother's background insufficiently elevated, unworthy of the Shen family. She had always harbored the desire for second uncle Shen Jianshan's branch to assume control. This was because second uncle's wife was grandmother's maternal niece. Put plainly, in her estimation, the second branch constituted grandmother's true family. After our relocation to the Shen family residence, all appeared tranquil on the surface. Prior to my 1-month milestone, I maintained the consistent behavior of exclusively acknowledging mother. Wherever mother went, I dutifully followed. The instant she moved out of my sight, I would begin to weep. This ensured mother rarely left my side and also prevented everyone else, including the nannies, the butler, and grandmother, from having any private interaction with me. On father's side, the investigation proceeded. He had individuals trace Chu Hongmai's phone call logs. Within these logs was a number contacted very frequently, each call brief but remarkably consistent. That number belonged to an unregistered SIM card. However, positional signal analysis indicated it was used 70% of the time near the Shen family villa. Father spoke with his assistant in the study, his face grim, his voice hushed. This indicates that the individual directing Chu Hongmai is located within the Shen household itself. The mole. I had been aware of this all along, but I could not yet articulate words. I couldn't directly inform father of the culprit's identity. My only recourse was to wait, either for him to uncover the truth independently or for the mole to betray their own misstep. Events proved I wouldn't have to wait excessively long. 2 nights prior to my 1-month celebration, At 11 p.m., mother was deeply asleep. Father was occupied with work in his study. The nanny had already departed for the night. I was alone in the nursery. Silence. A dark figure drew near my bassinet. I couldn't discern her features. Yet a recognizable aroma reached me. It was Aunt Wong, wasn't it? The housekeeper who had attended grandmother for more than 2 decades. She bent down, extending her hand to extract me from the bassinet. The precise moment her hand brushed my blanket. Wah! I erupted into the most potent cry of this current existence. Simultaneously, the nursery's intelligent alarm system activated. A shrill siren permeated the entire villa. Father's phone concurrently displayed a notification. Aunt Wang's face, alternating between stark white in the flashing red alarm light, turned utterly pale. In under 20 seconds, father burst into the nursery. Mother trailed closely behind him. Aunt Wong, what precisely are you doing in the delivery room? At 1:15 a.m., I had just uttered my first cry. A short while later, a nurse named Chu Hong Mai was scheduled to arrive, secretly take me, and exchange me for another infant. This same act had transpired in my previous existence, leading me to spend 2 decades struggling in a cramped rental apartment. Upon discovering the truth and reuniting with my family, a poisoned bottle sent me directly to the netherworld. This time, however, things are different. I spent a grueling 10 years working in the underworld, eventually earning enough karmic points to be granted this single opportunity for a fresh start. My gaze fixed on the wall clock as I silently made calculations. Chu Hong Mai was still 1 hour and 45 minutes away from executing her plan. After 1 hour and 45 minutes, Nurse Chu Hong Mai would open this room's door. She would state a necessity to take the infant for newborn metabolic screening. My mother, weakened by recent delivery, would undoubtedly harbor no suspicions. Chu Hong Mai would then carry me to the storage room located at the corridor's end. Her cousin, Lin Shu Lone, would be present, cradling another recently born girl. The 2 babies' identification bracelets would be unfastened and exchanged. In a mere 3 minutes, Shen Yu Ting would transform into Lin Ka Yu, and Lin Ka Yu into Shen Yu Ting. In my previous existence, this precise maneuver had robbed me of 20 entire years. However, currently, I was merely a newborn, incapable of speech or rolling over, and even my tiny head lacked self-support. My sole capacities were threefold: crying, gripping tightly, and remaining unsleeping. Nevertheless, this was ample. A decade spent in the underworld had instilled a crucial realization. A mother's instinct regarding her offspring stands as the most acute warning system imaginable. My task was simply to trigger it. My mother cradled me for a period, her eyelids progressively growing heavy. My father, positioned nearby, murmured, "You should rest first. I'll keep an eye on our child." No. In my previous existence, my father's inability to resist midnight drowsiness proved critical. His brief nap on the sofa provided Chu Hong Mai with her chance. I don't require my father's supervision. I need my mother to embrace me, holding me so securely that no one can separate us. Just as my mother prepared to return me to the adjacent bassinet, wail, I instantly erupted into a deafening shriek. This wasn't a typical infant's fussy cry but a guttural scream that strained my throat. Startled, my mother swiftly lifted me again. "What's wrong, my treasure? Hush now, no more crying." The instant I was held tightly against her, I ceased crying completely, my eyes still glistening with tears. A small hand gripping the collar of her hospital gown. Refusing to release it, my mother paused, then remarked to my father, "See, she's clinging so tightly, almost as if she fears me putting her down." My father extended a hand to take me. Wail. The crying intensified, becoming louder than before. Dad recoiled his hand. Startled, I promptly snuggled back into Mom's arms, becoming silent once more, my grip on her gown collar unwavering. Dad, simultaneously amused and resigned, commented, "Born just 2 hours ago, and she already prefers her mother?" A delicate film of tears seemed to glisten in Mom's eyes. "It appears she only accepts me." Mom tightened her hold, pressing me snugly against her. "In that case, I won't set you down. I'll sleep holding you tonight." The minutes slowly elapsed. By 2 a.m., Dad had drifted to sleep on the sofa. Mom, too, felt drowsy, yet every 10 minutes, I'd emit a faint sound, precisely enough to maintain her in a state between sleep and wakefulness. 2:30, 2:40, 2:50. My heartbeat accelerated with each passing moment. At 2:55, extremely soft footsteps resonated from the end of the corridor. The rubber soles of nurse shoes barely made a sound against the tiled floor. Nevertheless, I perceived the footsteps halting outside the hospital room door. the doorknob gently turning, and a woman in a white coat pushing the door inward. She appeared to be between 35 and 36 years old, possessed an ordinary physique, and displayed a conventional professional smile. She was pushing an infant transport bassinet. Chu Hong Mai. I had anticipated her arrival for a full decade. She lowered her voice, stating, "Mrs. Shen, I apologize for interrupting your rest. Hospital policy mandates that we take the infant for newborn metabolic screening. We'll return her immediately upon completion." My mother groggily opened her eyes. "Screening at this hour?" Chu Hong Mai clarified. "It's typically performed within 2 to 4 hours postpartum. It's simpler to conduct while the baby is calm." Her speech was precise, her demeanor suitably soft. In my previous life, my mother had fallen for this exact deception, and her hold on me began to relax. This was the critical juncture. Wail. My wails reverberated through the hospital room. I kicked my legs, shook my head, and my entire small frame trembled. My little body curled inward, clutching tightly to my mother. 10 tiny fingers dug deeply into the fabric of her maternity gown. Firmly anchored there, my mother was startled and, by instinct, tightened her embrace around me even further. "What's wrong, precious?" Dad shot up from the sofa. "What's going on?" Chu Hong Mai's professional smile briefly stiffened before she quickly regained her composure. "Mr. Shen, it's merely a standard examination. Perhaps the baby was disturbed by our conversation." Dad looked at me, my cries now hoarse, then shifted his gaze to Chu Hong Mai. "Is this test strictly necessary right this moment?" "This is hospital regulation. My daughter doesn't appear to be at ease. Could it be done during daylight hours?" Chu Hong Mai's lips twitched almost imperceptibly. Furthermore, Dad walked to the door and briefly surveyed the hallway. "It appears you aren't the nurse regularly assigned to this floor tonight." The atmosphere became instantly frigid for a couple of seconds. I'm covering for a colleague. She had an unexpected urgent matter." Dad remained silent, his expression growing serious. "Then kindly arrange with your supervisor tomorrow for a different time. Tonight is unsuitable." Chu Hong Mai began to speak, as if to protest, but Dad had already settled next to Mom, one hand resting on her shoulder, the other gently patting my back. His stance conveyed an unmistakable message. She was dismissed. Chu Hong Mai's gaze lingered on me for a few seconds, through the film of my tears. I perceived a chilling, murky depth in her eyes. Subsequently, she turned and pushed the empty bassinet out of the room. I quieted my crying, burrowing into my mother's comforting arms. Mom gently stroked my back, softly vocalizing a wordless lullaby. Dad did not return to the sofa, instead remaining by the bedside, observing us both. The following morning, early rays of sunshine filtered into the hospital room through the curtains. I rested in my mother's embrace, having, in reality, barely slept through the night. Nevertheless, I maintained an appearance of docility and stillness, embodying the ideal reassuring infant. Upon waking, my mother's immediate action was to look down at me, discovering my eyes were also open and fixed on her. Her voice trembled with joy. "Darling, look, she's just gazing at me." Dad leaned closer, intending to reach out and touch me. Instantly, I wrinkled my small face, pursed my lips, and my eyes turned red. Dad's hand paused in midair, eventually retracting with an embarrassed gesture. All right, Dad won't touch you now. Dad will just observe." My mother chuckled, unable to contain herself. "This little one truly is my appendage. She won't tolerate anyone but me touching her." "Exactly. I want everyone to be explicitly aware that this child only acknowledges her mother. No one should dare attempt to remove me from her embrace." That morning, during the doctor's rounds, the primary physician entered with a team. They conducted a thorough examination of me, confirming all vital signs were stable. The newborn screening was also rearranged, scheduled for daytime, and carried out according to official protocol by the head nurse herself. Dad remained by my side throughout, not once stepping away. I observed a distinct change in his gaze compared to the previous night. Then, it had been mere instinctive wariness. Today, however, his eyes clearly conveyed careful, methodical scrutiny. After the checkup, he fabricated an excuse to fetch breakfast, then stood in the hallway to make a phone call. His voice was hushed, but from my position in my mother's arms, I heard him distinctly. "Assist me in looking into someone. Chu Hong Mai, a nurse at this hospital. Additionally, retrieve the security camera footage from the third-floor maternity ward hallway from last night and forward it to me." Excellent. Dad was clearly not to be underestimated. As an entrepreneur who founded a security technology company, his vigilant instincts were inherently sharp. He had already commenced his inquiry. At 2 p.m., an uninvited visitor appeared in the hospital room. She was a woman in her early 30s, dressed in an ordinary floral patient gown, with a round, amiable face that appeared friendly when she smiled. She paused at the doorway, slightly poking her head in, and gently tapped the doorframe. Sister Shen, hello, I'm from room 206. The Lin family. I also delivered a baby girl yesterday, since we share the same birth date. I thought I'd drop by for a short visit. My mother, still recovering postpartum and feeling weak, appreciated the company. Please, come in and sit down. This was Lin Shu-lon, Chu Hongmai's cousin and the biological mother of the imposter heiress. Lin Ka-yu. In my past life, this very woman had orchestrated her daughter's placement within the Shen household, thereby usurping the life that rightfully belonged to me. At this moment, she smiled as she entered, her gaze briefly sweeping over me, a barely perceptible flicker of coldness in her eyes. Oh my, your daughter is so sweet and beautiful. May I hold her for a moment? She extended her hand, and my entire body instantly stiffened. A shrill cry erupted, my small face flushed crimson, and my arms and legs thrashed uncontrollably. My mother quickly embraced me tightly. Oh, I'm so sorry. She's very particular with strangers. She cries if anyone but me tries to hold her. Lin Shu-lon reluctantly withdrew her hand, offering a strained laugh. It's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. She's just a baby. It's quite normal. She abandoned her attempt, instead engaging my mother in conversation about childcare, discussing topics like formula, diapers, and even postpartum meal plans. While conversing, she subtly moved closer to my mother. Each time she breached the 3-foot perimeter around my bassinet, I would begin to whimper. As soon as she retreated, I would immediately fall silent. This sequence repeated 3 times, leading even my mother to notice something. Though she didn't voice her thoughts, she instinctively held me a little tighter. Lin Shu-lon stayed for over 30 minutes before departing, remarking with a smile before she left. If you get tired, just call me over to help watch the baby for a bit. I'm right next door. My mother offered a polite response. However, once the door closed, she looked down at me, appearing deep in thought. My little one, is there something you dislike? I gently rubbed against her palm. Blinking quietly, my mother smiled faintly, but within that smile, a very subtle hint of seriousness had emerged. All right, Mom understands. I'll make sure she keeps her distance from you from now on. As twilight approached, Dad returned, his demeanor visibly troubled. With a somber expression, he firmly closed the room door and spoke to my mother in a hushed tone. I arranged for an investigation into last night's nurse, Chu Hongmai. She's only been employed here for 3 months, and both her credentials and work history on file are fabricated. My mother's eyes widened. What are you implying? And the corridor camera from last night, precisely during that time frame, experienced a malfunction and recorded absolutely nothing. Having worked in the security sector for 2 decades, I've never encountered such a coincidental equipment failure. My mother's complexion instantly shifted. Instinctively, she clutched me tighter, her voice trembling. Are you suggesting that individual last night wasn't here to examine our child? Dad did not provide a direct answer. He settled onto the bed's edge, one hand clasping my mother's, the other gently caressing my head. Don't be alarmed. I've instructed my assistant to contact the police and also demanded that the hospital bolster its security measures. From this moment forward, when I am not present, absolutely no one is permitted to touch our Yu-ting. My mother nodded decisively. I shut my eyes, nestling my small face against my mother's chest. Dad had initiated his response, precisely 2 decades ahead of my previous life. My continuing responsibility was simply to convincingly portray a compliant infant who clung solely to her mother. Immediately upon discharge, Dad arrived with 4 bodyguards to escort us. 2 designated nanny vehicles were waiting, with all arrangements meticulously finalized, for the 20-minute journey from the hospital to the Shen family villa. My mother held me continuously, never once releasing her grip. Dad occupied the front passenger seat, engaged in a constant stream of phone calls, completely overhaul the house's camera system, ensuring no blind spots remain, equip the nursery with smart alarm devices. All entries and exits must trigger real-time alerts to my phone. And yes, re-evaluate and select new nannies. Thorough background checks are mandatory. And their familial connections, going back 3 generations, must be meticulously verified. As I lay cradled in my mother's arms, listening to these directives, a profound sense of security enveloped me. In my previous incarnation, my identity was exchanged because, despite the Shen family's affluence, Their security awareness was woefully inadequate. The notion of a newborn being swapped had simply never occurred to them. This life presented a stark contrast. Dad had already transitioned into a proactive, protective stance. Upon our arrival at the Shen family villa, I was entering this residence for the first time as its rightful heir. In my previous existence, I had been 20 years old when I initially crossed this threshold. Back then, I wore a 100 yuan dress, my hands clutching a crumpled DNA test result, my entire body trembling. The security guards at the gate had stopped me thrice, questioning, "Who are you seeking? This is not your place." Now, however, the butler respectfully opened the car door, and nannies had already unrolled a red carpet. Grandpa stood at the entrance, his face alight with laughter, wrinkles creasing around his eyes. "My eldest granddaughter is home? Let Grandpa have a look." He extended his arms to pick me up. I instinctively furrowed my tiny face. Yet this time, I managed to suppress my tears. After all, Grandpa had been exceedingly kind to me in my past life. Following my recognition, he was the first to propose sharing his inheritance with me. I merely turned my head slightly, burying my face into my mother's neck. Grandpa showed no offense. Instead, he guffawed. "This child is just like her mother, once she's decided. Not even an army could separate them. Excellent, she has spirit." Grandma stood behind him, dressed in a deep red cheongsam, a formal smile gracing her features. However, I observed that her gaze upon me differed completely from her look at Grandpa. When she regarded Grandpa, her eyes conveyed thoughtfulness and deference. When she looked at me, there was only scrutiny. "Oh dear, this baby is truly lovely, just like her mother." Grandma reached out to stroke my face, without a moment's hesitation. I burst into small, plaintive sobs. Grandma's hand froze mid-air. Mom quickly consoled me. It's all right, my precious. Don't be scared, it's Grandma." Grandpa intervened cheerfully. "She's just a baby. She'll get used to it in a few days." Grandma withdrew her hand, her smile unwavering, but a very faint, almost imperceptible chill flickered deep within her eyes. This expression was profoundly familiar to me. In my previous life, after my return and recognition, Grandma had also regarded me with this exact look, outwardly polite, yet radiating an intrinsic aloofness. Later, I discovered that Grandma had initially opposed Dad's marriage to Mom. She deemed Mom's social background insufficiently distinguished, unworthy of the Shen family. Her greater desire was for second uncle Shen Jian Shan's branch to assume power, as second uncle's wife was her maternal niece. To be frank, in Grandma's estimation, the second branch constituted her actual family. Once established in the Shen residence, outward appearances suggested tranquility. Prior to my 1-month milestone, I maintained my established pattern of only allowing my mother's presence. Wherever Mom moved, I followed compliantly. The instant she was out of my line of sight, I would commence crying. This rendered my mother virtually inseparable from me and simultaneously prevented anyone, including the nannies, the butler, and Grandma, from having any solitary interaction with me. Meanwhile, Dad's investigation was advancing. He had arranged for Chu Hongmai's phone call logs to be examined. Within these records, a particular number appeared with remarkable frequency, although each call was brief. Their regularity was striking. This number was associated with an unregistered SIM card. However, positional signal analysis revealed that it was utilized approximately 70% of the time in the vicinity of the Shen family villa. Dad, with a grim expression, conversed with his assistant in the study, his voice deeply suppressed. This indicates the individual directing Chu Hongmai is located right within the Shen household. The internal mole. I had always been aware of this, but at present, being unable to communicate verbally, I couldn't directly inform Dad of the culprit's identity. My sole course of action was to wait, either for him to uncover the truth independently or for the mole to expose themselves through an oversight. As it turned out, I did not need to wait extensively. 2 days prior to my 1-month full term, at 11 p.m., my mother was deeply asleep. Dad was occupied with work in his study. The nanny had already concluded her shift. I was the sole occupant of the nursery. Stillness. Moonlight pierced through the window curtains, projecting faint patterns of light onto the ceiling. I opened my eyes, counting my breaths. 1, 2, 3. Click. The sound of a doorknob turning. Someone gently pushed open the nursery door. The footsteps were exceedingly soft, clearly deliberate. A shadowy figure advanced towards my bassinet. I couldn't discern her features distinctly, but I detected a familiar aroma. Was it Aunt Wong, the housekeeper who had been with Grandma for over 2 decades? She stooped, extending a hand to remove me from the bassinet. The instant her hand made contact with my blanket, I unleashed the loudest cry of my current existence. Concurrently, the nursery's intelligent alarm system was triggered. A piercing siren echoed throughout the entire villa. Dad's phone simultaneously displayed an alert. And Wang's face, alternately brightened and shadowed by the red alarm light, turned stark white. Within 20 seconds, Dad had rushed into the nursery, with Mom close behind him. "Aunt Wang, what are you doing?" Aunt Wang's entire body trembled, her hand frozen mid-air. I heard the baby crying and went to check," she stammered. My father then replayed the nursery camera footage on his phone. The video clearly showed Aunt Wang entering the room, heading directly to the crib, bending down, and reaching out, her actions suggesting she intended to take the baby, not merely check on it. "Tell us the truth," my father's voice, sharp as a blade, demanded. "Who sent you?" Aunt Wang held firm for 10 minutes. Then, after my father made a call and the police arrived, she crumpled, collapsing to her knees in a tearful, snot-filled mess. "Mr. Shen, I apologize to everyone. Someone offered me 500 yuan to take the baby out tonight and hand her over to someone." "Who gave you the money?" my father pressed. "To whom were you supposed to hand her over?" With trembling hands, Aunt Wang pulled her phone from her pocket. Her call history clearly showed a frequently dialed number, the exact same number found on Chu Hongmei's phone. My father's expression grew grim. He ceased questioning Aunt Wang and instead instructed his assistant to trace the number overnight. The police then escorted Aunt Wang away. My grandmother, drawn by the disturbance, descended the stairs, her face etched with displeasure. "What's all this commotion?" she demanded. "What kind of ruckus is this in the middle of the night?" My father looked up at her. Aunt Wang secretly entered the nursery in the middle of the night, planning to abduct Yu Ting, he explained. My grandmother froze, if only for a moment. Then, with a furrowed brow, she spoke, her voice laced with disbelief. "Aunt Wang has been with your mother for over 20 years. How could she possibly do such a thing? Could there be a mistake?" "The camera footage is clear, and she's already confessed," he replied. My grandmother fell silent for a few seconds. Then she must have been deceived. She finally said, "Your mother knows Aunt Wang's character. She's not a bad person." My father remained silent, but I caught the probing look in his eyes as he stared at my grandmother. My mother clutched me tightly, her entire body trembling. "Mom, Aunt Wang has been by your side all this time. Did you truly have no idea she was involved in this?" I heard my father ask. My grandmother's expression shifted. "What are you implying?" she retorted, her voice rising. "Are you suspecting me? I am her grandmother. Would I ever harm my own granddaughter?" Just then, my grandfather came downstairs. He glanced at Aunt Wang being escorted away, then at my grandmother's face, before walking over to me and gently taking me from my mother's arms. It was the first time he had ever held me. To everyone's surprise, I didn't cry. His hands felt firm, imbued with the distinct warmth of an older person. Holding me, his voice was not raised, yet it carried immense weight. Investigate to the very end," he declared, "no matter who is involved. The truth must be uncovered." He then cast a look at my grandmother, his voice deepening. "No one will be exempt," he stated firmly. My grandmother's lips trembled. Without another word, she turned and headed upstairs, cradled in my grandfather's arms. I watched her retreating back. She moved quickly, but just as she rounded the hallway corner, I caught a fleeting glimpse of her expression, a swift flash of panic. That night, sleep evaded everyone in the house. My father remained in his study, making call after call. My mother sat on the bed in the master bedroom, holding me close, her eyes red-rimmed. My grandfather had instructed someone to move my crib into the master bedroom. From that evening on, I would sleep with my parents. At 4 a.m., once the villa finally settled into silence, I discerned faint footsteps descending the stairs. They proceeded directly to the nursery door, which was now empty. The footsteps paused briefly, then changed direction, heading toward the master bedroom. They stopped right outside our door. After a long while, I opened my eyes. Peering through a gap in my crib, I noticed a dark silhouette beneath the door. The figure stood motionless for exactly 5 minutes before silently departing. The following morning, I awoke in my parents' room. Sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, creating a warm, peaceful glow, as if the previous night's events had never occurred. Yet, I knew the identity of the shadowy visitor, as a faint trace of ambergris still hung in the air. In the Shen family, only my grandmother wore that particular fragrance. That night, after everyone else had fallen asleep, my grandmother went to the nursery alone. Discovering it empty, she then moved to stand outside the master bedroom door. She stood there for 5 full minutes, doing nothing, yet those 5 minutes felt more chilling than any direct action. By the third day, my father's assistant had identified the true user of the phone number. Mr. Shen, although this number wasn't registered under a real name. Cross-referencing cell tower data showed that it was used in the same location over 80% of the time. Where? My father asked. Quishan Zhuang Villa, in the eastern part of the city. That's the home of Shen Jianshan, your biological younger brother, the head of the second branch of the Shen family. My father sat in silence for a full minute before calling my grandfather. Father, I've investigated, he reported. Jianshan is the one who orchestrated Chu Hongmei and Aunt Wang. A long silence followed on the other end before my grandfather's voice finally came through the receiver. I know, he said. For now, let's not alert him. The full month celebration will proceed as planned. I will handle it then. After hanging up, my father sat alone in his study for a long time. He retrieved an old photograph, a younger grandmother cradling a newborn uncle Jianshan. Her face alight with a gentle, proud smile. Beside them, my father, as a teenager, wore an unusually solitary expression. He suddenly recalled a memory from his childhood. He had once asked his grandmother, Mom, do you love my younger brother more than me? His grandmother had gently stroked his head, smiling as she replied, How could that be? Both the palm and the back of the hand are flesh. Yet, the hand that had stroked his head had never held him as tightly as it had held his younger brother. My father slowly set the photograph down, his gaze fixed on the moonlight outside the window. He murmured softly, Mother, what exactly do you consider this family of ours to be? The full month celebration took place at the Shen family's ancestral home, with 300 tables set and over half of the capital's elite in attendance. I wore a specially tailored pale yellow dress, nestled securely in my mother's arms. The grand hall buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses as everyone crowded around to see me. Oh, the eldest daughter of the Shen family is simply adorable. Her eyes are like jewels. Someone exclaimed. This child clearly brings good fortune. She's destined to become the capital's foremost socialite. I obligingly blinked, behaved perfectly, neither crying nor fussing, when a woman leaned in. I even managed a perfectly timed upward twitch of my lips. A gasp of delight followed. Oh my. She's smiling. A 1-month-old knows how to smile already? How incredibly clever. My mother beamed with such pride. Like a peacock fanning its tail. My father stood by, snapping countless photos, wishing he could capture every single one of my smiles. My grandfather, holding a teacup, stepped onto the stage and cleared his throat. The entire hall instantly fell silent. Today marks the full month celebration of my granddaughter, Shen Yu Ting, he announced. Little Yu Ting has been unique since birth. She only accepts her mother. Anyone else who holds her makes her cry. Yet, in her mother's arms, she's as docile as a kitten. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Then my grandfather's voice grew solemn. The Shen family's journey to where it stands today has been arduous. Now that I am old, I must consider the future. Today, I am formally announcing the establishment of a dedicated education trust fund for Yu Ting, with an initial contribution of 50 million yuan. Furthermore, I am transferring 5% of the Shen Group's shares into Yu Ting's name. A tremor went through the entire hall. A 1-month-old baby, endowed with a 50 million yuan trust and 5% of a major corporation's shares. This was an unprecedented event in the capital's elite circles. Amidst the thunderous applause, my attention was drawn to two specific individuals. First, my uncle Jianshan, who sat at a corner table, gripping his wine glass so tightly his knuckles were white. A rigid smile plastered across his face. Second, my grandmother. She sat beside my grandfather, smiling and clapping, but her eyelids were noticeably trembling. Uncle Jianshan could no longer contain himself. He rose, carrying his wine glass, and approached the stage, patting my father's shoulder. Big brother, father is certainly generous with your Yu Ting, he remarked, but, truly, the Shen family tradition has always been that one's position is commensurate with their capabilities. Yu Ting is merely 1 month old. Isn't it a little premature to be allocating shares already? Whispers began to ripple through the audience. Before my father could respond, my grandfather interjected. Jianshan, do you find it too soon? He questioned. Then when you were 25, and I provided you with startup capital to launch your company, wasn't that also too early? How much did you lose on that venture? Should I itemize the losses for everyone present? Uncle Jianshan's face flushed, then paled, as the entire hall fell into a stunned silence. My grandfather calmly took a sip of his tea. This is my money, he stated. I'll give it to whomever I choose. Do you have an issue with that? No, he mumbled. Uncle Jianshan, looking utterly deflated, returned to his seat. His wife, Aunt Tu, tugged nervously at his sleeve. her face a sickly shade of green. My grandmother attempted to diffuse the tension. All right, she interjected. Today is our granddaughter's joyous occasion. Let's not create a scene. My grandfather cast a single glance at her, and my grandmother's words died in her throat. The full-month celebration resumed with its clinking glasses and convivial atmosphere. Cradled in my mother's arms, I quietly observed everyone. Uncle Jianshan sat hunched in a corner, sullenly scrolling on his phone. Aunt Tu subtly dabbed at the corners of her eyes. My grandmother made frequent trips to the restroom, each return marked by a slightly more strained expression. My grandfather, however, remained utterly unperturbed throughout. Midway through the party, my grandfather summoned my father to his study. As my mother carried me past the study door, I heard my grandfather's voice from within. You don't need to investigate the Chu Hongmei matter any further, he stated. I've known for 3 years that there was an issue between your mother and Jianshan. I've simply been waiting for them to expose themselves. Now the bait has been taken. My father paused. Father, are you implying mother? I've already said, he interrupted. I will deal with it after the full month celebration. Your sole task now is to care for Yu Ting properly. In my mother's arms, my heart skipped a beat. My grandfather knew everything. He had been aware much sooner than I could have imagined. He had been playing a long game, a chess match far grander than I had comprehended. Following the full month celebration, the Shen family outwardly returned to a facade of tranquility. However, I understood that the undercurrents of conflict had never ceased. At 2 months, I could roll over. At 3 months, I could hold my head steady. At 4, I learned to sit, and by 5 months, I had 2 new teeth. My mother meticulously documented each milestone in a small notebook. When I reached 5 months, I acquired a new skill, uttering meaningful syllables. Ma, my mother burst into tears on the spot. Husband, she called me, Mom. My father rushed over, as giddy as a child. Come on, call Dad, he urged. Ma, try again. Ma. My father's face fell. I inwardly chuckled. It wasn't that I couldn't say, Dad, I simply chose to save those 2 words for the most significant moment. When I turned 6 months old, my father organized a lavish party for me, hosted at the Shen family's most luxurious hotel. The celebration was twice the size of my full-month event. Every prominent figure in the capital's elite attended. Even some usually reclusive patriarchs honored us with their presence. The reason was straightforward. Word had spread through the capital's high society that the Shen family's eldest daughter was a prodigy. At 5 months, I could say, Mom, and by 6 months, I was articulating over 10 meaningful syllables. Among the ladies of the capital's elite, I had already earned the nickname, the Shen family's little lucky carp. At the 100-day celebration, my father made an announcement to the assembled guests. I have decided to contribute an additional 100 million yuan to Yu Ting's personal trust fund, and simultaneously increase her shares in the Shen Group from 5% to 15%. Yu Ting is my eldest legitimate daughter, the senior-most child of the Shen family, and the future heir to the Shen Group. This declaration is now set in stone. Thunderous applause erupted throughout the hall. Uncle Jianshan, seated in a corner, turned livid. He abruptly rose, slamming his wineglass onto the table. Big brother, you've gone too far, he fumed. Mother and father are still here. By what right do you unilaterally decide the line of succession? You are not the Shen family's only son. The grand hall instantly fell silent, eyes darting between my father and uncle. The atmosphere taut with tension. Uncle Jianshan's voice grew increasingly loud. A 6-month-old child is being given 15% of the shares? On what grounds? Just because she can say, Mom. What about my son? Then, he continued, my son is also of Shen blood. Enough. My grandfather's voice, though not loud, instantly quelled all other noise. He set his teacup down and looked directly at Uncle Jianshan. Jianshan, you claim your son is of Shen blood? Very well, then let me ask you one question. My grandfather continued. 3 years ago, who recommended the hospital where your wife underwent IVF? The air instantly thickened with tension, and Uncle Jianshan's face immediately contorted. My grandmother shot up from her chair. Old man, sit down, she exclaimed. My grandfather merely uttered 2 words. My grandmother, as if drained of all strength, slumped back into her seat. My grandfather retrieved a leather envelope from his vest pocket and placed it on the table. This is the paternity test report for Jianshan's son, he announced. I had it done 3 months ago. That child is not Jianshan's biological son. A collective gasp rippled through the hall, and Aunt Tu's face instantly went deathly pale, utterly devoid of color. What? She stammered. What do you mean by that? My grandfather's gaze slowly shifted to my grandmother. Do you care to explain to everyone whose old classmate the director of that hospital is? He questioned. How was the test sample swapped that year? And where is your illegitimate child from back then now? My grandmother's entire body began to tremble violently. How did you know? She whispered. My grandfather offered no reply. Instead, he simply rose and walked toward me, bending down to gently stroke my head with his rough hand. At that precise moment, I distinctly uttered the two words I had held onto for so long. Grandpa. My grandfather's eyes instantly welled up. He lifted me from my mother's arms, holding me tightly against his chest, then turned to face the entire assembly. Did you hear that? He boomed. My granddaughter just called me Grandpa. This is the legitimate bloodline of the Shen family. His gaze swept over my grandmother, then settled on Uncle Jianshan. Whoever dares to harm this child again, he warned, I will ensure they are erased from the Shen family's lineage. 3 days after that party, my grandfather called a family meeting at the Shen family's ancestral home. Present were my parents, Uncle and Aunt Jianshan, and several distant relatives who held shares in the Shen group. My grandmother was also there, sitting in a corner, her eyes swollen and red like tomatoes. She had barely slept for 3 days, appearing to have aged a decade. Cradled in my mother's arms, I silently bore witness to this family tribunal. I was, after all, only a 6-month-old baby. In their view, I couldn't comprehend anything. My grandfather instructed the lawyer to present all the evidence on the table. Documents, photographs, call recordings, a complete chain of proof, like an iron-bound link, connecting my grandmother and Uncle Jianshan. 30 years ago, my grandfather began. She had an illegitimate child with a man named Lu from her hometown. That child later adopted the name Lu Jianming and now owns a small trading company. 3 years ago, through her old classmate, the former director of Jiying Hospital, she arranged to swap the sample during Jianshan's wife's IVF procedure. That child is Lu Jianming's son, not Jianshan's, and therefore not of the Shen family bloodline. Because she was aware that Jianshan was infertile, my grandfather's voice remained unnervingly calm, as if he weren't exposing his own family's deep-seated scandal. Yet his hand, resting on the table, visibly trembled. Aunt Tu utterly crumbled, leaping from her chair, her body swaying as if she'd lost her backbone. Impossible, my child. I carried him for 10 months. She shrieked. She whirled to face Uncle Jianshan. Did you know? She accused. Did you know this all along? Uncle Jianshan's lips quivered for a long moment, but he remained speechless. My grandmother finally broke. With a thud, she knelt before my grandfather. Oh, I was mistaken. I was blinded, she sobbed, but I also did it for the good of the Shen family. The main branch only has one daughter. What if later? Enough, my grandfather interjected, cutting her off. For the good of the Shen family? You swapped bloodlines, brought an outsider's child to impersonate Shen family lineage, and you call that, for the good of the Shen family. You ordered someone to abduct your own granddaughter, intending to replace her with an outsider's child, and that's, for the good of the Shen family. In your heart, there has only ever been your illegitimate child. You never truly considered this our family. My grandfather had never displayed such profound anger in his entire life. His voice boomed throughout the grand hall. My grandmother remained on her knees, shaking uncontrollably. My grandfather took 2 documents from the lawyer. The first is a divorce agreement, leaving empty-handed. The second is a shareholder change document for the Shen Group. All shares registered under your name will be revoked and transferred to Yu Ting's trust fund. He stated, sign it. My grandmother looked up, her face streaked with tears. Oh, after 50 years of marriage, this is how you treat me? She pleaded. My grandfather did not acknowledge her. He turned to Uncle Jianshan. You participated in the scheme to swap the child, instigating Chu Hongmei and Aunt Wang to act against my granddaughter. He declared, as of today, the Shen family severs all ties with you. Your assets will be frozen, and all company shares under your name will be fully reclaimed. You and your mother will leave together. Uncle Jianshan's face was now utterly bloodless. He opened his mouth, as if to plead, but then met my grandfather's gaze. It was the look of an 80-year-old man betrayed by his own family, filled with such profound despair and resolute finality that it left no room for appeal. Aunt Tu remained seated, silent throughout, only shedding quiet tears. Finally, she rose, walked over to Uncle Jianshan, and slapped him forcefully. Shen Jianshan, you've ruined me, she cried, then turned and walked away without signing or stamping any documents. My grandmother was then escorted by 2 nannies into a car, destined for her old family home in the countryside. Before departing, she turned her head for one final look at me. Her gaze was incredibly complex, impossible to decipher. Her gaze held a complex mix of resentment, hatred, regret, and a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Cradled in my mother's embrace, I met her gaze with a calm demeanor. In my previous life, she had tacitly consented to the infant swap, condemning me to 20 years of destitution and ultimately, death by poisoning. Her banishment from the household in this lifetime was already a lenient outcome. My second uncle also departed. Head bowed, like a disgraced dog, he slunk furtively through the grand gate. Halting at the threshold, he glanced back at me, cradled in my father's arms. I held his gaze, his lips twitched subtly, as if he were about to speak, but no words were uttered. The door then clicked shut behind him. Only my parents, grandfather, and I now occupied the grand hall. Grandfather settled back into his seat, seemingly aged 2 decades in that brief moment. He extended a hand in my direction. I deliberately stretched out my tiny arms, signaling for him to pick me up. This marked the first occasion I had ever initiated being held by another. Grandfather embraced me, his voice thick with emotion. Vu Din, I'm so sorry, I almost let harm come to you. From this day forward, I will protect you with my very life. No one will dare touch a hair on your head. My father moved to embrace my mother's shoulders, and her pent-up tears finally flowed. Nestled in grandfather's arms, I reached up with my small hand to gently wipe the corner of his wrinkled eye. Grandfather wept for a considerable time. With grandmother's departure from the Shen household, the air within the home felt noticeably lighter. My mother no longer lived in constant apprehension, becoming my devoted shadow, always by my side. While father's security protocols remained robust, a visible sense of ease settled over him. Meanwhile, I officially entered a phase of accelerated development. By 7 months old, I was clearly articulating, Dad, Mom, and Grandpa. A few months thereafter, I was pulling myself up to stand using the sofa. At 10 months, I took my very first steps. By my first birthday, I was speaking complete short sentences. For example, Mommy, carry Daddy to Grandpa for dinner. Each new utterance thrilled the entire household as if they'd won the lottery. Grandfather proudly proclaimed to everyone he met that his Vu Din was a born prodigy. Unparalleled in the entire capital, my mother's social media feed was daily filled with my pictures, attracting more comments than a celebrity. However, 1,000 miles away, my grandmother, exiled to her rural hometown, and second uncle, ousted from the Shen family, were far from quiescent. When I reached 18 months, an incendiary post erupted online. Its headline screamed, "The sordid truth of the Shen family. Capital's richest clan. Mother forcibly expelled. Swept from her home. How much longer can Shen Jianjun's facade of grandeur endure?" The article painted grandmother as a pitiable elderly woman, cruelly expelled from her home by the combined efforts of her son and daughter-in-law. Second uncle was portrayed as a righteous individual, retaliated against for revealing family scandals. It even concocted a narrative of my mother's inherent jealousy, making her intolerant of her mother-in-law. The piece was accompanied by photos of a weeping grandmother, her face awash in tears, and an emaciated, forlorn-looking second uncle. There was even a picture of me. The caption questioned, "Is this little princess, coddled by the entire family, truly worth the Shen household's collapse?" Within 48 hours, the post amassed over 30 million views. The comments section erupted. The Shen family truly is cold-blooded elite, capable of driving out their own mother. To sever ties with a brother and mother just for a daughter, that's beyond ruthless. The family dynamics of the wealthy are utterly twisted. Upon seeing the article, my mother nearly dropped her phone. "This is all a fabrication." My father's face turned ashen, and he immediately instructed his legal team to intervene. Yet, online public opinion, once it gains momentum, proves incredibly difficult to contain. Shen Corporation's stock price plummeted 8% in 3 days. Business partners began making probing calls, and suppliers seized the opportunity to inflate prices. For the first time, the Shen family's business empire faced a significant blow stemming from internal family affairs. Seated on the living room carpet, I observed the news headlines scrolling across the television screen. Though merely 18 months old, my mind retained a decade's worth of experience managing files in the underworld. The nuances of public opinion warfare were abundantly familiar from my past life's dossiers. Some individuals leveraged an anonymous post to decimate an entire enterprise. Others wielded a single video clip to completely reverse their fortunes. The crucial factor lay in who first seized control of the narrative. I crawled to my father's feet and tugged gently at his trouser leg. "Yes, sweetie, what is it?" I pointed first at the television, then at my father's phone. Naturally, I couldn't articulate the full strategy, but I could certainly provide guidance. Reaching for the remote on the sofa, I randomly pressed a few buttons. The television screen promptly switched to a short video platform. Coincidentally, the recommendation page displayed a video centered on mothers and children. It featured a mother filming her baby's daily activities. I pointed at the video, clapping excitedly. Mommy, come look, baby wants to watch this. I nodded vigorously, then pointed at myself, and finally at my mother's phone. My parents exchanged a look. Are you suggesting we film something similar, sweetie? My mother inquired. I offered a wide grin and clapped my hands enthusiastically. My mother, of course, couldn't fully grasp an 18-month-old's strategic insight, but she instinctively felt it was better to narrate the Shen family's story themselves, rather than allow others to invent malicious tales. That evening, my mother uploaded the first video to an anonymous account. There was no explanation, just a short clip of my daily life. It showed me quietly turning pages in a picture book in father's study. Mother was nearby, slicing fruit, while grandfather, stooping, furtively peeked through the doorway at me. Caught in the act, he chuckled and scampered away. The entire video, under 30 seconds, was warm, authentic, and utterly commonplace. This created a stark contrast with the cold, aristocratic image portrayed online. 4 hours after posting, it had 1 million views. Within 24 hours, 5 million. The tide of comments began to turn. This family seems quite normal. Actually, wasn't that previous post just intentional slander? Wait, I've looked up that account. It has a history of posting fabricated content. Capitalizing on this momentum, my father's legal team sprung into action, officially initiating a lawsuit against the anonymous poster. Police traced the IP address, pinpointing the computer used for the malicious post. It was located in the office of Liu Jianming's trading company, grandmother's illegitimate son. Liu Jianming was summoned, and concurrently, several illicit financial transfers second uncle had concealed within Liu's company were brought to light. In less than a week, public opinion completely shifted. It turned out the expelled relatives were indeed the instigators, committing wrongs and then attempting to retaliate. The Shen family's decision to sever ties was vindicated. Shen Corporation's stock rebounded 3 days later, and partners' calls transitioned from cautious inquiries to outright apologies. My mother, holding me in the living room, let out a long, relieved sigh. My darling, are you my little lucky star? I reached out to touch her face, my baby voice reassuring. Mom, no fear. Her eyes welled up, and she embraced me even tighter. Life continued, day by day, in this manner. Once the turmoil settled, the Shen household fully regained its tranquility. Second uncle was investigated for economic offenses and subsequently sentenced to 3 years in prison. Liu Jianming's trading company, cited for regulatory infractions, was fined into bankruptcy. Grandmother remained at her old rural home, reportedly spending her days chanting Buddhist scriptures, having ceased all contact with the Shen family. As for me, under the steadfast protection of the Shen family, my true development began. By age 3, I was fluent in 3 languages, Mandarin, English, and French. My mother enrolled me in the capital's most prestigious kindergarten. During my admission interview, the panel of judges remained agape throughout. Ms. Shen, are you certain this child is only 3? My father proudly nodded. My daughter possesses an excellent memory and learns swiftly, just like me. My mother shot him a pointed glance. She's clearly like me. I stood beside them, flashing a wide grin. Whoever I resemble, in this life, I want for nothing. At 5, I began piano lessons and simultaneously started studying Go with grandfather's longtime chess companion. Grandfather stated, business and Go are alike. You must foresee 3 moves in advance. Wu Din, you are destined to carry on our legacy, so your vision must be far-reaching. I nodded obediently, thinking internally, grandfather, I don't just see 3 steps, I've already seen an entire lifetime unfold. At 8, my father first brought me to the company, not for play, but to sit quietly in a corner of his office. Observing him work, I listened intently, maintaining the facade of an innocent child who understood nothing of the adult world. Yet, each evening at home, I would lie prostrate at my study desk, meticulously organizing all the day's information into comprehensive mind maps. On one occasion, father accidentally glimpsed my work, and his jaw nearly hit the floor in astonishment. When did you learn to create mind maps? My kindergarten teacher taught me, I replied with an innocent blink. Father remained half convinced, half skeptical, yet from then on, he consciously began discussing rudimentary business scenarios with me. He soon discovered I not only comprehended, but could also offer surprisingly insightful analyses. Wu Din, do you believe we should proceed with this acquisition? No, their debt-to-equity ratio is excessively high. The favorable appearance of their financial reports is merely due to asset revaluation. Should the market experience any volatility, they won't withstand it. My father regarded me for a long moment, silent. Finally, he ruffled my hair. Are you certain you're only 8 years old? At 10 years old, the National Youth Business Simulation Competition, which had a minimum age requirement of 12, was underway. My father, leveraging his connections, arranged for me to attend as a special observer. Yet ultimately, I couldn't hold back. During the feedback session for a high school team's plan, a critical flaw emerged. They had severely underestimated the risks associated with raw material price volatility. I raised my hand to offer a critique. The judging panel initially seemed amused, poised to dismiss me and tell me to sit down. Instead, within 3 minutes, I meticulously dismantled their entire financial model, exposing its every weakness. I clearly highlighted 3 critical risk points. The entire auditorium fell into stunned silence. Following the competition, the organizers presented me with a special, Outstanding Vision award. The news swiftly soared to the top of trending searches. Headlines read, 10-year-old girl crushes high school team. HEIRESS's business acumen astounds the industry. Grandfather, overwhelmed with joy, even set off a string of firecrackers at home. My mother made a screenshot of the news report her phone wallpaper. My father, outwardly composed, secretly uploaded a 9-photo album of me to his social media feed. At 12, I officially began my apprenticeship with father at the Shen Corporation. That same year, the Shen family encountered a truly formidable business crisis. A critical upstream construction materials supplier for Shen Corporation's flagship real estate project suddenly became the target of a hostile takeover. The acquiring party employed a convoluted network of shell companies to obscure its true identity. Yet, in just 3 days, I utilized publicly available business registration data, meticulously following each lead to uncover the real controlling party. It was Liu Jianming. After his release from prison, he had changed his name and adopted a new identity, using grandmother's private funds to rebuild his career. This time, he had covertly orchestrated a move, intending to choke off the Shen Corporation's lifeline directly from its supply chain. I laid the investigation results before my father. He read them, then remained silent for 5 minutes. You cross-referenced business registration information. Furthermore, the registered addresses of several shell companies exhibited a high degree of overlap. All this data was public. Few simply connected the dots. My father's gaze upon me had transformed, no longer seeing a child prodigy, but an adversary, one worthy of his serious consideration. Subsequently, he implemented my recommendations, preemptively relocating crucial supply chain links. Simultaneously, leveraging the family connections of some wealthy acquaintances from school, he secured 2 new strategic partners. Liu Jianming's hostile takeover completely misfired. He had meticulously planned his moves for an entire year, only for me to dismantle his scheme in mere 3 days. When the news reached Liu Jianming, it was rumored he shattered an entire wall of custom glasses in his office in a fit of rage. Meanwhile, I sat in my father's office, flipping through the next quarter's financial forecast, occasionally gazing up at the clear sky outside the window. The day was bright, utterly devoid of clouds. On my 18th coming-of-age ceremony, the capital saw its first snowfall of the winter. The banquet hall on the top floor of the Shen Corporation building glowed with brilliant lights. Grandfather personally presented me with a jade seal, upon which the characters, Vu Din, were intricately carved. From this day forward, you are the largest individual shareholder of the Shen Corporation. I accepted the seal, my fingertip lightly tracing the 2 characters. Vu Din. In my previous life, this name was stolen from me for 2 decades. In this one, it was finally, fully mine. My father stood beside grandfather, his eyes a little reddened. He patted my shoulder, silent, but I understood. My mother, her makeup smudged from crying, dabbed at her lipstick, murmuring, "How has my daughter grown so fast?" I reached up to wipe her tears. "If you keep crying, I'll tell Dad to take the birthday cake away." "You wouldn't dare?" The entire hall erupted in laughter. Guests arrived in a steady stream to offer congratulations. Venerable families from the capital's elite, new power brokers, strategic partners, and even influential figures from both political and commercial spheres, all respectfully addressed me as CEO Shen. 18-year-old CEO Shen, the youngest head of an elite family in the capital's entire history. Midway through the celebration, my assistant approached, whispering, "CEO Shen, someone at the door wishes to speak with you. She claims to be an old acquaintance." I set my wine glass down and walked toward the banquet hall entrance. Flurries of snow drifted down. Below the steps stood an 18-year-old girl. She shared my exact birth year, month, and day, dressed in a faded, well-worn puffer jacket, her hair dusted with snowflakes. She clutched a thick folder to her chest. Lam Ka Wei. In my previous life, she wore the down jacket my mother had bought, smiling as she handed me a cup of poisoned tea. In this life, she stood amidst the falling snow, her nose tip a raw red from the cold. Upon my appearance, she instinctively straightened her posture. Hello, my name is Lam Ka Wei. I know you don't know me, but I have something I'd like to show you. She extended the folder. I took it and opened it. It was a startup proposal, meticulously crafted, with a clear layout and robust data. The project, an infant safety protection system. Its core technology, a biometric multi-feature recognition bracelet for tracking infant identity. From the moment of birth, it employed 3 layers of authentication, iris scan, fingerprint, and umbilical cord DNA, to ensure an infant's identity could never be swapped. I turned page after page, stopping only at the very end. The final page listed the company name, Vu Din Protection Technology Company Limited. Vu Din, my own name. I looked up at her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, yet she fought to hold back tears. When I was 6, my mother went to prison for fraud. I was sent to a welfare orphanage. At 9, the orphanage received an anonymous donation for its education fund. I later traced that money back to the Shen Corporation. I know it was you who donated. She took a deep breath. I haven't come to beg for anything. Perhaps you don't understand my words, but I simply want you to know that I didn't turn into a bad person. I want to create something that prevents other children from being confused, stolen, or swapped in the future. If you consider this project a worthwhile investment, then treat it as a business venture. If not, she bowed deeply, then thank you for taking the time to review it, and please accept my apologies. Snow settled gently on her shoulders. I observed her. In my previous life, Lam Ka Wei had enjoyed 20 years of the life that was rightfully mine. Then, instigated by others, had personally poisoned me. In this life, Lam Ka Wei had grown up in a welfare home since age 6. Enduring profound hardships, yet, she had not become bitter or resentful. She had chosen a profoundly different path. I closed the proposal, drew a pen from my pocket, and on the investment intention section of the final page, affixed my signature. I'm investing in this project. She suddenly snapped her head up, tears finally cascading. But I have one condition. What condition? Don't change the company name. She paused, then burst into a laugh, tears still streaming down her face. Before re-entering the banquet hall, I cast one last look at her. Snow continued to flutter. 18-year-old Lam Ka Wei stood in the snow, embracing a freshly endorsed dream. She didn't know why I had chosen to help her, nor did she need to. For some debts are not settled with hatred. I re-entered the warmly lit banquet hall. The air was filled with warm lights and lively chatter. From across the room, Mother waved. Sweetie, come quickly and cut the cake. Father held up his phone, ready to capture a photo of me. Grandfather, a gentle smile on his face, sipped his tea from the head of the table. This was my home, my life. Thank you for joining me for today's story. I deeply value your comments, feedback, and insights. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. I look forward to sharing more stories with you soon.